Okay, so welcome everyone. This week is Parshas Tzav. And I have to tell you a little secret. It was actually very hard to prepare this week's Torah version. and then I was like not surprised because I saw that the Talmud says that whoever learns the book of Vayikra, which is the book that we're in right now, it's as if he's slaying a lion. Why? Because it's so difficult. It's so full of intricate laws. And also, besides for the intricate laws, there's such Kabbalistic significance to everything. And it's so hard to understand. So this was a challenge for me. And hopefully we'll see how it goes, okay? Okay. So again, we're in the book of Vayikra, which is Leviticus. This is the third book of the Torah. We were in Bereshit, Genesis. Then we did Shemot, which is Exodus. Now we're in Leviticus, the third book of the Torah. And the first book of the Torah kind of lays the groundwork. It establishes us as a nation. It teaches us about our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and why God chose us as his people, why God chose us as his nation. So that's talking about our background. In the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, we became a nation. We were just these individuals, this family, but now we became a nation. And we became a nation that God tells us is going to be a light unto the nations and has a purpose and has a mission. In the book of Vayikra, we get into the details of what that mission is. And that's why it has a lot of laws in the entire book of Vayikra. And that's why it says Vayikra is kind of like the essence of who we are. It teaches us who we are. What we're got here for is for this. This is what we're supposed to do. Now, as it tells us what we're supposed to do, it's in the book of Vayikra, which is the third book of the Torah, which is interesting because it says the Torah was given in the third month, right? We have Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. Sivan is the third month of the year in the Jewish calendar. It was given we have three parts of the Torah. We have the Torah, which is the 5 books of the Torah, which is the Torah. Then we have the Nevi'im, which is the books of prophets, and then we have Ketuvim, which is the books of writings. Tanakh, right? There's 3 different parts to the Tanakh. The Torah was also given to a people where we have Kohen. There's always the people that are the Kohen. They come up and they give the blessings and they have various responsibilities. Levi, and then Yisrael. So again, the 3 different distinctions. The Torah was also given by 3 siblings, Moshe, Aharon, and Miriam, the 3 siblings. So we have the number 3 very much intertwined in the Torah, and the book of Vayikra, which is the third book, which is describing the essence of what the Torah is, the essence of the laws of the Torah. And the reason for the number 3 being so prominent is because the Torah takes something spiritual and holy and takes something mundane and physical and fuses them together. And the way that it does that, when we have 2 opposing views on something, you say this, I say this, the way that we come together is with number 3. That it's not about you, it's not about me, but let's find that place of compromise, that place that includes both views. And that's what the Torah is meant to do. That's why it says Torah brings peace to the world. And it brings peace between these different factions that we might think spirituality, physicality, they're fighting with each other. But no, the Torah tells us how to fuse the 2, how to bring the 2 together, and how to use physicality for the sake of spirituality. And that's really what the book of Vayikra is all about. And that's why it is the third book of the Torah. Now, significant in this book of the Torah, we have what starts off in Vayikra. It already started off, and it continues in this week's Parsha, which is Parshas Tzav, and it's all about sacrifices, karbanot, the offerings, the sacrifices. Now, sometimes we think about sacrifices. Let's talk for a minute about sacrifices. When we say that we are sacrificing for something, what does it mean to sacrifice for something? What does it mean when I say, I'm sacrificing my career for my children?
Giving up.
You're giving up, or you're postponing it, or and you're giving it up for what? For the sake
Something else.
For something else that you feel is
More important.
more important. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sacrificing. So you're giving up, or you're subjugating, you're lessening some part of yourself because you realize something else is more important. When I make sacrifices for my marriage, it means I'm giving up certain things because I feel my marriage is more important. This is what's important to me. When I say I'm sacrificing my time, I'm saying I'm giving up my time for the sake of something that's more important to me. So really, sacrifices is something that we do in order to show what's important to us, what counts with us, right? You're sacrificing something and it brings out what's really important. I might love my career, but I'm making certain sacrifices in my career because I love my children more. I might love certain things in my schedule, but I'm sacrificing it for the sake of my marriage because I feel my marriage is worth it. I might sacrifice my time, which I value so much, because I think something is worth more for me. So it's bringing me closer to the things that I really value, and it's bringing out those things that I value. It's bringing out my priorities. What is my priorities? And when you have to choose between one and another, that's really when you're showing what is your priority, what's important to you in life, what is it that you value so much more that you're willing to sacrifice. And the word in Hebrew for sacrifices really has nothing to do with sacrifices. It's called karban. And the word karban means to come close, karev. Lekarev, right? To bring close. Kiruv, closeness. So when we give the sacrifices, God is saying to us, come close to me. Come close to me. Sacrifice or give up some of the animalistic, because we take the animal and we sacrifice it. Give up some of your animalistic desires. Of course, there's the sacrifices that are also just flour or meals, but a lot of the sacrifices are animals. Give up some of the physical, the animalistic desires for something greater. And that greater is that relationship with me. Come close to me. That's what karbanos are. It's about us coming close to God and us realizing through the sacrifices what is important to us, what is important in our lives, what are our priorities in our lives. So we might think that our physicality, our egotistical self, our animalistical self is very important, and it is important. It's important to take care of me and my needs and my wants and what I want and all the physical that I desire. That's important, but then there's something even more important, and that's a higher purpose, a spiritual purpose, a godly purpose, coming closer to God so I'm not anymore so full of my egotistical, animalistic self. I'm ready to sacrifice some of that for the sake of God. Just like a person says in their own lives, I'm ready to sacrifice certain things in order to do what's more important, what I really value in life. And that's the idea really of the sacrifices. And when we look at the sacrifices on a deeper level, you look at what's happening and it's almost like, what? Like taking an animal and sacrificing it? But really what we're talking about, there's so many layers and layers of meaning. And Kabbalistical, there's layers and layers of meaning to every single part of the procedure of the sacrifices, of what it's supposed to elicit within us and what we're supposed to learn from it and how we're supposed to change ourselves. And that's why there's different sacrifices in different parts of animals, in different parts of, or even meal offerings, which isn't animals, where we are giving and sacrificing different aspects of our own selves to God in order to have this kiruv, in order to have this coming close, to be closer to God, to feel God's presence more in our lives. So let's take an example of something that we do in the sacrifices and how that relates to us. How can we understand it? Because of course today we don't have anything like sacrifices. Our prayers are our sacrifices. We use prayers instead of any animal sacrifices or meal offering sacrifices is our prayers. So the Torah portion starts off with saying how we burn the animal on the altar, and we're going to talk about what that altar means. And we wait until we burn it until all the fats are burned. So when we talk about the fats of the animal, what does it mean on a more esoteric level of what we're trying to do for ourselves? So when you think about fat, what is fat really? Huh? Excess pleasure. Excess and pleasure.
Yeah,
right? Fat. It's the anything
Yes.
that you really want to eat is going to be full of fat because those are the good things that we want, right?
Yes.
Those are the things we crave. Right? So fat is the pleasure. It's the pleasure in life. And we're saying take some of that pleasure that we have in life and sacrifice it to God. And some of that pleasure that we have in life is sacrificed to God. The fat is supposed to burn on the altar in the morning, and it can continue burning through the night. What does that mean in our own lives? So when we look at mourning, so we said fat means our pleasure, our own personal pleasure. And really any animalistic part of ourselves, but specifically the pleasure that we're feeling. When we're sacrificing that animalistic part of ourselves and specifically the pleasure that we're feeling, there's two aspects to the pleasure that we might be feeling, to the fat that we might be having. One is the day and one is the evening. What's the difference between the day and the evening? So day pleasures are those kind of pleasures that are more positive, more God-oriented pleasures. For example, well, let's start with the night pleasures. The night pleasures are pretty obvious. It's those pleasures that are nighttime. They're dark. They're more difficult. They're more animalistic. The day pleasures are the more God-oriented pleasures, the more higher pleasures. So what do we mean? What's wrong with higher? Why do we have to sacrifice this? But let's say when we talk about pleasures, let's say you get a pleasure from something good that you did. For example, you give charity and you feel, look at me. I gave so much money to charity. Wow, I'm a great person, right? That's a daytime pleasure that you can sacrifice. That you're not giving charity in order for you to feel good. You're giving charity because this is what God wants you to do, right? Now, we know that if a person does, at the end of the day, if you're going to give charity just because you're going to feel good, keep giving your charity. Hamaisa hu ha'ikr. The main thing is the deed. The main thing is that you do good things.
Absolutely.
And that way everyone else benefits. So just keep on doing it. But at the same time, we know what we need to strive for. And what we strive for is that I'm doing things, the right thing, even the things that I'm doing that are correct, the daytime things, I'm doing those things not for my own self, not so I should feel good about it, but I'm doing it because this is what God wants of me. So I learn Torah, and I could feel, look at me, I'm such a scholar. Or I do mitzvot, and I feel, I'm such a religious person, I'm wonderful, look at what a tzaddik is, what a righteous person I am. That's not the right thing. We do Torah, we do mitzvot, not because we want to feel, look at me, look at what I am, and pat ourselves on the back. Again, if you're doing it and you're still patting yourself on the back, that's fine. Just keep doing it. But we want to strive for this higher level, that we're doing this because God wants this of us. And it's very simple. You could take an example of a husband-wife relationship. Suppose a husband is doing something for his wife because he knows, I'm going to do the dishes. She'll be really nice to me. I'll get what I want. Okay? Whatever that is. So that's one level. And we'll say, okay, keep doing it. But on a higher level, we don't want him to be doing it because he'll get something out of it. Oh, now she's going to be nice to me. Now she's going to give me what I want. No, the reason why you want to do it is because he loves his wife and he wants to be nice to his wife because of that reason. Or take parent-child relationship. You know, when a parent says to a child to do something good, so the child could start off doing it, you know, because they're going to get a reward or they're going to get a sticker on the chart or something. That's fine for a child. But as you get older, hopefully you're going to be doing it because of the right reason, because this is the right reason. This is why we do it. And so that's what these fats on the sacrifices that we sacrifice are. The pleasures that we get, the feeling good that we get from the daytime, from things that are good, and then even the nighttime things. The nighttime are physical things, mundane things, not spiritual things. The daytime are the good things, the mitzvot, even the good things that we're doing. We're saying do it for the right reason. The nighttime are those things that we just get pleasure from life. You know, we get pleasure because we're eating the banana muffin, because it's good, it tastes good, it gives me pleasure, right? It really is, right? Or living in a nice home, or having nice clothes, or anything that we get pleasure from in life, the physical things of life. So even those things we're saying, try to have in mind something higher than just that. When you eat, try to have in mind the blessing that you're going to be saying on the food. Try to have in mind that the food is going to be energizing me, and with that energy I can do mitzvot. Try to have in mind, when I have a nice home, I'm going to invite people, I'm going to do hachnasat orachim, I'm going to invite guests over to my home. Use it for a higher purpose. The pleasures that you have can be used, the physical pleasures, the nighttime pleasures can be used for the sake of finding God in our lives, for the sake of the relationship that we have in God. So even those fats, even those pleasures can be used, those mundane things can be used for something higher. Have in mind something higher that we're working on in order to do it. So this is the message of the fats that we burn on the altar. Now, another explanation given of the day and the night is something, not only are we talking about the types of pleasure, but we're talking here about ourselves, the times of day and the times of night. The times of days in our lives are the times when we're very in tune with our soul, we're in tune with others, things are going well in our lives. Everything seems to be matching up and things are going okay. You know, there are times that you wake up in the morning and the sun is shining. And it's not only the sun is shining, but you feel shining. You feel like everything is going well in your life, thank God. You're not right now facing a terrible challenge or a terrible turmoil. Things are going okay. During those times of our lives, it's a lot easier not to be concerned or to focus on the facts, my own pleasure, what I need, my own needs, my own wants, making sure I get it. During the nights of our lives, during those times when things are dark, when things are challenging, when there's turmoil, when there's a lot of things difficult in our lives, that's when it's a lot more challenging to be aware of other people and not just my own personal pleasure, but how can I serve God in a way that isn't only about me, where I can think about others as well. During those times, it's a lot more difficult to be burning the fat on the sacrifice. But we're told that even though it's harder during those times, we can do it. Not only can we do it, but by doing it, we then usher in, it says in the pasuk that when the fats burn from the day, we start the sacrifices during the day, the fats continue burning to the night, and till it ushers in the next morning. And this teaches us that by thinking of others rather than ourselves, it might be natural to think of others during the daytime, but when you think of others during the nighttime of your life, during those challenging times of your life, during those difficult times, during the times when you're going through something hard and you can still burn those fats, you can still think about somebody else other than yourself. You can still think of a higher purpose of getting closer to God other than just my needs and my wants. It's harder, but you still do it, then you're ushering in the next day. You're creating the next morning. You're creating the next time of goodness, and on a more cosmic level, you're actually ushering in the redemption for all of us. You're creating a situation. It's during those night times of our lives, while we work on ourselves, even though it's so hard to work on ourselves, but we sacrifice a little bit of our pleasure and we stop thinking about me only and start focusing on others around us. That's the work that we're doing here during exile. That brings in the next morning. That brings in the next time of prosperity on a spiritual level, a material level, and every other level. And that's the idea of the burning these fats burning these fats of pleasure on the altar. Now it tells us as well that the fire on the altar needs to burn all night. And what this is telling us is that, again, the night is those dark times in our lives. So even during the night, we need to make sure that we have some spiritual inspiration. Even in those dark times, especially in those dark times, we need some more of that spiritual illumination in our lives because it's so dark. And we might think, well, during the dark times of our lives, forget it. It's impossible. There's no way. I can't focus on anything other than me and my challenges and my difficulties because I'm so constricted right now. That's all I could think about. And the Torah is telling us, no, even during the nighttime of your life, the altar needs to keep burning. The light needs to be, the inspiration needs to be kept burning. Maybe even more so you need it now. During those dark times of your life, you can find that divine inspiration. You can find that light. You can find, even in the harshest times of your life, there is a way that you can find some kind of spiritual illumination, some kind of fire. And it's that fire that will help you to keep continuing until the next day comes. Now, when we burn the fire, we burn it during the day, and the Kohen kindles the fire, but then God adds to the fire. God adds a miraculous fire. So it's our effort. We have to put in the effort, but then God contributes to the effort that we put in. And then it burns throughout the night. So during the hard times of our lives, those challenging times of our lives, we do need to take inspiration from the good times of our lives. So it's especially in the good times when things are not so challenging that you need to bring the godliness into your life. You need to bring that spiritual schedule into your life, because that is going to help you during those challenging times, during those difficult times. But even if you haven't done that, you could still find that light in those difficult times. But you will usually draw upon those daytime moments. And those daytime moments have to be started by you, and then God contributes to it. So we have to start it, and then God adds to the fire. God contributes to the fire, but it starts with our own effort. Okay, and then it talks about the ashes. Now you're going to say, what are ashes? What do the ashes have to do with it? The ashes of the sacrifices. So it says when there's a lot of ashes from the sacrifices, and you can imagine there would be a lot of ashes. So the ashes would be piled up next to the altar. And when it became so high, the priest would have to take the ashes and bring it outside of the camp. And he would actually bring it outside of the camp of Israel. So what do these ashes signify? These ashes signify, if you think about it, ashes are those parts that couldn't even be burnt up. They couldn't even be sacrificed. So it's those parts, those pleasure parts, those animalistic parts of ourselves that are so animalistic you can't even bring it up as a sacrifice. There's still something remaining. There's the ashes that remain, the lowest part of ourselves. And interestingly, who's dealing with these ashes? The priest. The same priest who is bringing the holy sacrifices, who's engaged in these most spiritual activities of coming close to God, is also the same person who's dealing with the ashes, those parts that are so not brought up to God, they can't even be elevated to God. He's the same person, meaning the priest.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
you said priest.
The Kohen.
I know, but you say priest. I know it's
Okay,
Kohen.
Kohen. We'll say Kohen only. Kohen is the
I'm
priest.
sorry.
Thank you. No,
I'm
good,
sorry.
good
It's-
points. Good, very good point. The Kohen. The Kohen is dealing with these ashes, the strongest physicality, the strongest animalistic part that it can't even be brought up to God. And not only is he dealing with it, but the same Kohen has to actually take those ashes to outside of the camp. He has to, the person who's dealing with all the significant parts of bringing the holy sacrifices in that temple is also told, you have to deal with this part. And it's kind of a lesson for all of us, in child rearing or in any aspects of our lives. There are moments that you're going to be dealing with things that are very mundane things, and they're not even spiritual things.
Unpleasant.
They're unpleasant things, exactly. And you need to be taking care of it. Not only should we not, the priest didn't think, well, I'm too high for this, right? This is beneath me. No, when we're talking about a Jewish person, when we're talking about a human being, when we're talking about a soul of God, so there's some ugly parts, there's some bad parts, there's some parts that can't be elevated. The same priest has to do it. The same priest who's involved, not even a lesser priest, the same priest who's involved with the sacrifices, that's a priest who's also involved with even the ashes. And when it comes to the point that there's so much ashes it can't stay by the altar anymore, he has to bring it outside of the camp. When he brings it outside of the camp, he changes his clothes and puts on different clothes in order to take it outside of the camp. And this is to teach us that when we sometimes have to go out to outside of the camp, we can't just be worried about what's happening in our own environment, in the temple, right around us, in this holy environment. But we actually have to go out. We have to go out to others. Just like Chabad people go. They go out on the streets, right? They go out on the streets to the people who aren't interested in Judaism and say, would you like to light Shabbos candles? And even if they're told no 10 times, they'll keep on saying, or would you like to wrap tefillin? And even if they're screamed at, they keep going, because this is the job of the priest. This is the job of the Kohen, the holy Kohen. This is what we each have to do. You know something in Torah? Teach it. You know an Aleph? Teach it. Whatever you know, go out and teach it. Teach it to others. Teach it to those around you. And there are times when you even have to change your own clothes. You have to go in, you have to wear street clothes. The Kohen went outside of the camp, he changed his clothes. And what this means for us is when you talk to people who don't have an understanding of Judaism, who aren't so well versed in the Torah, change your clothes. Talk to them in a way that they'll understand. Put on street clothes. Make sure the message is something. Don't dilute the message. The message has to be not diluted, but you can be wearing street clothes. You can be talking in a way that the message is accepted and understood by others. You need to make sure that the way that you present what you're presenting is taught in a way that others can understand, that others can appreciate. Others who might not be in the temple, in the Mishkan, in the Beit HaMikdash, in the holy confines of the camp. They're outside of the camp. They're completely outside of this environment. It's up to you to teach it. And we could say the same thing when it comes to children. There are times when you have to tell children, explain to children in a way that they can understand. They might not be in the camp right now that you're thinking of. They might not have the intellectual abilities. Bring it down to them and wear their street clothes. Wear clothes that they can wear, because this is something that is important for everybody. This is something that everyone needs to understand. Yesterday we were at our Perm Seudah with my daughter's in-laws and me and my grandchildren. And at one point I see my oldest granddaughter is getting so frustrated while all the adults are talking, and she's like, she's nothing. So I said, come, let's go. We went into the kitchen and we made a whole scavenger hunt.
Oh,
And it completely changed her experience. You know, here she was all upset. There's all this adult talking.
how old
And
is she?
she is, she's in 4th grade, so she is.
Wow. Big girl at 10.
10. So, you know,
Nice.
the younger ones were like, just
Yeah.
playing around. They were okay. They were cute, but she was like getting frustrated. You know, there wasn't enough for her to do. So we made a whole scavenger hunt with different words related from Purim, and she had a blast. And then she made the scavenger hunt for the adults, and that like transformed her. So this is the idea that we need to sometimes change our street clothes. Don't talk the adult talk when the kids need the inspiration. We need to translate it into something. And the talk was beautiful talk. It was all about the Megillah and different parts and understanding it and all these different explanations. But the kid wanted something on her level. And that's what we need to do. Go out of the camp. Go out of the camp and wear even the street clothes if necessary to relate it to others that aren't right now exactly where you are. And that's the message really of the ashes and what's done with the ashes. And then there's a message that I love, and that is, there's a pasuk that says, Eish tamid tukad al hamizbeach. There has to always be a light on the mizbeach, on the altar. Lo tichbeh. It cannot be extinguished. This light always has to continuously stay on the altar. It can never ever be extinguished. It's day and night. It has to continuously be there. And the Kohen's job was to constantly make sure, cut up the logs, put the logs on, stoke the fire, make sure the fire is always there. The Mizbeach, on a metaphorical level, represents our hearts. This is our hearts. And it says, in our hearts, there always has to be this fire of enthusiasm, this fire of eagerness, this fire of positivity. When you have this fire of positivity, lo tichbeh. So lo tichbeh means it should not be extinguished, but it can also mean lo, the negativity will be tichbeh, will be extinguished. Meaning, when you have that fire of enthusiasm constantly burning within you, the negativity becomes extinguished. And this is such a powerful message for our own lives. You know, there are times when we get so cynical or so negative or so angry or so upset with things. And the message is, you're going to keep getting upset unless you have that enthusiasm. When you have that enthusiasm, when you have that enthusiasm in life, when you have that joy in life, that eagerness in life, automatically the negativity becomes extinguished. And here we're having a coffee. So tell me in your own lives. No, I want to talk, but you guys to talk.
Karen.
I do have something to say. Because I was, I thought that was incredible that you said, you know, you have to like put on your street clothes. And as soon as like you said that, it's like you, I mean, I just kind of saw a picture of like getting on the floor and like speaking to children because they don't understand and it's very like scary when an adult is like looming over them. So as soon as like you said that, I was like, oh, it's like getting on a kid's level. I was like, why didn't she just say that? You know, it was like perfect the way like you blended it in. But you know, I always think this way, just like personal, real quick. Before like I work with clients and I practice energy work, I go and I actually change my clothes because my teacher, this incredible woman, she taught me you have to be in a different state when you're doing something for someone else. So, you know, she kind of like explained it to me in a way that like made sense to me, and like how we dress for Purim, we're dressed all in white. So whenever I have a client, I'm always like wearing white. So I just have to go, I have to take off like my clothes and I have to start over.
Wow.
And I'm ready, you know, and it's like, it's the same thing, you know, they say, you know, we wear so many different hats in our lives. I know people say like, okay, now it's time to like take off the coat and be a mom and work in the kitchen and put on the apron, you know, so it's the same thing because what we do, or, you know, like just anybody could do, you have to remember who your audience is, what your intention is, and what is it that you're doing. So those are the most important things like you have to keep in your head. You're dealing with a person's soul, and you have to be able to see past their shell in order to see into their soul. So like you say it to yourself, like, I'm here for you. I'm nothing, like this is for you. I want you to know. So it's the same like thing, like putting on like the different clothes is the same thing of how we, and I'm gonna relate it to Barbara, how we like dress up for Shabbos. Like every day you can see me like this, but for Shabbos you'll never see me like this. You know what I mean? It's like, this is important enough where you put the time, you put the effort, and you make it about something other than yourself, you know,
But you
and
look
you're
very
doing
nice.
this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You always look so good.
Yeah.
Everything is matching.
Yeah, thank you. But you know, that's kind of how I relate it to.
That's a
As
very
soon as
good
you're saying
point.
it, I just have this like picture. So I'm drawing a picture in my head of your work.
Yeah, I know, I saw you
Yeah.
smiling, so I knew you were thinking something.
When you were relating to taking out the ashes, I'm thinking of Gedolim out there, of famous men, famous Rabbeim, and their stories, their biographies that people would tend to read, not just to look and to see how the lives that they lived, but the lives that they lived, that they sometimes they took off their clothes, they changed their clothes, they took out the garbage, they took out the ashes, and they did things that they weren't just high and mighty because they spent their whole lives learning, but yet in that learning became the sensitivity for humanity and the sensitivity for understanding that sometimes this pashut person, this simple person next to me needs something simple, and how that they would relate to that. So, you know, I think of taking out the garbage, but you know, what is your garbage? Your garbage is your life. Your garbage is the food that you ate. The garbage is the essence of who and what you were and what you did in your day, you know.
Exactly,
So,
beautiful.
it would be that important. So you're talking about the Ner Tamid, right?
Right.
This burning
Yes,
light
well,
all the
this
time.
light, yes,
This
this
light.
constant light on
Right,
the
constant
Mizbeach,
light,
that has
right.
to be constant.
Right.
And that's really the eagerness, the enthusiasm in our own hearts. So,
You can even relate that to the people Yid. You know,
yes,
they-
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Wow.
So, you know, there were people in the past who used to say, "Oh, it's schwer zu sein a Yid." So hard to be a Jew, right? Oh, and what happened? Their children thought it's so hard to be a Jew. You know, that it was this hardship, this difficulty. Whereas if we take it and we say this is a joy, then all the negativity just becomes extinguished. It's all so much about our perspective. I was interviewing the Plutkins, which you'll see soon, and they had a child who was a special needs child. And they decided right when the child was born, we're going to take it as if this is a privilege. And she says, of course, there was a lot of challenges involved, but we're going to make it into this special thing that we're so privileged to have this child, that the soul of this child is so high that that's why they're coming into this, as the Rebbe explains, like a special child is a child whose soul is so high that the body can't even contain it. That's how high and how holy and how pure the child is. And she said she gave the children that feeling, because this was her youngest and she had many children, that this child is so special. And her children went to school and they felt this. Why? Because the mother felt this. The mother felt this enthusiasm. The father felt this enthusiasm. They conveyed it to their children. And she said she got a few phone calls from parents. I don't know what you're saying, but my kids want a special child. They want us to do whatever we can to have a special child. But it just shows how your attitude, how your perspective can completely change everything. And that's what this last message is. Lo tichbet, the negativity becomes completely extinguished. How? When you have that joy, when you have that enthusiasm, when you have that perspective on what you're doing and you feel that joy in what you're doing, then all the hardships fall by the wayside. And we see this especially in parenting. You know, when you are as a parent and you talk about the beauty of what you're doing, the beauty of Shabbat, the beauty of keeping kosher, the children feel, wow, we have this beauty. When you talk about the beauty of being a Jew, how lucky we are to be a Jew, how fortunate we are, how we are such a beautiful nation, the children feel that pride. It's something that automatically gets transmitted. And then the difficulties, and of course there's difficulties with everything in life, the challenges become extinguished. The challenges become something that fall by the wayside because the focus is really on the joy and the enthusiasm that we have. And this is true with our own lives as well. When we get focused on all the negativity and the difficulties and the challenges that we're having in our day-to-day, we become consumed with negativity. On the other hand, when we wake up in the morning and we say, the positivity, the good that we have in our life, how much we have to be thankful for in life, how we can thank God for waking up another day, how we can thank God for what we have, how we can thank God for being a Jew, for waking up in the morning as a Jewish person, then the day becomes a different day. Wow. The negativity becomes tichbeh, it becomes extinguished. And we can sail through the difficulties of the day so much easier because of that perspective. So these are some of the messages that we learned from this week's Torah portion of the Korbanot. That's a lot.
That's life.
It's a lot. It's about taking those facts, those pleasures, and finding something higher, just like we try in our own relationships to do something for the other person, not because it's making me benefit, but for the other person. Finding some higher meaning to the physical aspects of our lives. How the priest doesn't look at any of the mundane things as mundane, and how we should look at other people around us when we're doing something for others. Nothing is mundane. Everyone is holy. And even when we go out to somebody outside, we wear their street clothes. We try to relate to them. We try to be with them. And we try to speak their language with our children, with others, people who aren't on our level. We try to make it applicable and relatable. And finally, how we need to make sure that we always have that joy, that enthusiasm in us. And like we mentioned, it's hard sometimes in the nighttime, but the reward is so much better. We bring in the next day because of it. We usher in the next day through the challenges. We can find the light of God even in the darkness. And by finding that joy and that enthusiasm, we extinguish all the negativity. So we have a lot to work on this week.
So good. Really, so encouraging to